most dangerous people in any society are those who have beautiful theories about how life should be lived while possessing no capacity whatsoever to live according to their own pronouncements. In this episode, Gurdjieff helps us identify these hypocrites both inside and outside us. This could be like a splash of cold water on your face, so watch yourself while listening. And if you're new to the channel, join our awakening community by subscribing to this channel. I have watched this pattern repeat itself across continents and cultures with such consistency that it reveals something fundamental about human psychology. Everywhere I travel, I encounter people who speak eloquently about virtue, who can discourse for hours about proper behavior, who know exactly how everyone else should conduct themselves. Yet, when you observe these same individuals in actual situations requiring the qualities they praise so highly, they reveal themselves as complete hypocrites, incapable of embodying even a fraction of what they preach so passionately to others. This is the moralist, the person who has confused thinking about goodness with actually being good, who mistakes talking about right action for the capacity to act rightly. Your civilization produces these individuals in alarming quantities because your educational systems teach people to manipulate concepts while leaving their being completely undeveloped. The result is walking encyclopedias of ethical philosophy who cannot maintain their composure when someone speaks to them sharply, who cannot resist petty temptations, and who cannot control their own reactions for even 5 minutes of actual living. Morality, as you understand it, is outer morality, a collection of rules and prohibitions that vary from place to place, time to time, culture to culture. What is moral in one country becomes immoral when you cross a border. What your grandfather considered virtuous, your grandson regards as backward superstition. Outer morality is a stick with two ends that can be turned this way and that depending on who holds it and what purpose they wish to accomplish. The moralist bases their entire identity on outer morality. They have memorized the rules of their particular culture and historical moment, then appointed themselves enforcers and judges of these arbitrary standards. Watch how pleased they become when identifying moral failures in others. Observe the satisfaction on their faces when they can point to someone who has violated the code. This satisfaction reveals everything about their actual level of being. A man once came to my group in Paris, a professor of ethics at a respectable university, author of several books on moral philosophy. He could quote ancient philosophers, discuss various ethical systems with impressive erudition, and explain in elegant language the proper conduct for every situation. Yet in the group, when asked to perform simple exercises requiring attention and control of his own reactions, he failed. Another student accidentally stepped on his foot, and he exploded with rage, cursing like a dock worker. When his food arrived late at the table, he complained bitterly, making everyone uncomfortable. When asked to share credit for group work, he found elaborate justifications for why his contribution deserved special recognition. This man knew everything about morality as an intellectual concept, while possessing nothing of actual moral capacity. His knowledge existed only in his head, in the thinking center, completely disconnected from his emotional center and moving center. When life demanded he actually embody the principles he taught to university students, his being revealed itself as that of a petulant child wearing the costume of a moral authority. Here is what you must understand. Knowledge and being are two completely different things. You can acquire vast knowledge while your being remains at the level of an infant. Your libraries overflow with books about virtue written by people whose personal lives were disasters of selfishness and weakness. Your institutions employ teachers of ethics who cannot manage their own families. Your religious leaders preach compassion while treating their subordinates with cruelty. This split between knowledge and being is the defining characteristic of your civilization. You believe that learning information about how to live is the same as developing the capacity to live that way. You think reading books about courage makes you courageous, studying texts about patience makes you patient, and memorizing principles about compassion makes you compassionate. This is a complete illusion. I have said that your aim must be inner morality, which is something entirely different from the outer morality that moralists preach. Inner morality cannot be taught through books or lectures. It develops only through actual work on yourself, through thousands of small efforts to control your automatic reactions, through conscious suffering when you force yourself to behave according to principle, despite your mechanical preferences. The moralist wants to skip this difficult work entirely. They prefer to remain in the comfortable realm of theory where they can feel superior to others without having to face their own mechanicalness. They create elaborate philosophies about how people should behave while making zero effort to change how they themselves behave. Then they are shocked, deeply offended, when you point out the gap between their words and their actions. Watch what happens when you place moralists in situations that test whether they possess the qualities they praise. A man who gives eloquent speeches about honesty will lie immediately when telling the truth threatens his reputation. A woman who writes passionate articles about generosity will fight savagely over small amounts of money. A teacher who lectures about patience will become furious when students ask questions that slow the class. These contradictions do not bother the moralist because they have never actually observed themselves. They live in a pleasant fantasy where they imagine themselves to be the noble person their theories describe. They are completely unconscious of the huge gap between their self-image and their actual behavior. When this gap is pointed out, they become defensive, angry, and full of elaborate justifications for why their particular failures do not count as true violations of the principles they preach to others. During my time in Russia, I knew a revolutionary who spoke beautifully about equality, brotherhood, and the dignity of all people. He could move crowds with his speeches about the moral necessity of treating every person with respect, regardless of their social station. Yet I watched this same man treat waiters with casual contempt, snap at servants as if they were animals, dismiss the opinions of anyone he considered intellectually inferior. When I mentioned this contradiction, he explained that his behavior toward these individuals was justified because they supported the corrupt social order. He had an intellectual justification ready for every failure to embody his own stated principles. This is the mechanism that allows moralists to maintain their hypocrisy indefinitely. The thinking center can produce explanations for any behavior, can rationalize any contradiction, and can construct elaborate theories about why this particular situation requires an exception to the general rule. The moralist lives entirely in these mental constructions, never once experiencing the confrontation with their own being that would shatter their comfortable self-image. The moralist is dangerous precisely because they appear to represent something valuable. They use language about virtue, speak about principles, and reference traditions that genuinely contain wisdom. People who cannot discern the difference between knowledge and being mistake the moralist's eloquent words for evidence of development. They follow these empty teachers, adopting their ideas while learning nothing about actual transformation. I have watched entire movements form around moralists who had beautiful theories and zero capacity for doing. These movements inevitably become sources of suffering for their members because they promote an impossible ideal, that you can become good through thinking about goodness, that consciousness can be developed through reading about consciousness, and that being can be changed through accumulating information about being. The followers of such teachers waste years, sometimes decades, believing they are working on themselves when they are merely learning to talk about work. They memorize terminology, they discuss subtle distinctions between concepts, and they debate fine points of theory. Meanwhile, their actual behavior, their real reactions, their essential being remains completely unchanged. They become sophisticated moralists themselves, one more generation of people who know everything about how to live while possessing no capacity to actually live that way. Your Christian tradition offers a perfect example in the figure you call the Pharisee. These were religious experts who knew every detail of scriptural law, who could debate endlessly about proper interpretation of sacred texts, who made elaborate public displays of their piety. Yet, according to your own scriptures, they were condemned as hypocrites because their knowledge existed entirely in their heads, while their hearts remained hardened, and their behavior toward others revealed no genuine compassion or understanding. The tragedy is that moralists often do possess accurate information. The principles they articulate may be valid. The traditions they reference may contain genuine wisdom. The problem is not with the ideas themselves. The problem is that ideas divorced from being are worse than useless. They create the illusion of development while actually preventing real work by allowing people to believe they already possess what they only talk about. Now I discuss about something completely different from outer morality. From the time when humanity began living on earth, from the time of the first humans, there started to form within people, with the help of God, nature, and their surroundings, an organ whose function is conscience. Every person has this organ, and whoever is guided by it automatically lives according to God's commandments, if you want to use religious language, or lives according to objective morality, if you prefer philosophical terms. This conscience is buried deep within human beings, covered over by layers of conditioning, false personality, and the demands of outer morality. Most people never access their conscience at all because they are too busy following or rebelling against the arbitrary rules of their culture. The moralist is particularly distant from conscience because they have substituted outer morality entirely, believing that their knowledge of ethical systems somehow connects them to something real. Conscience, when it can be felt, produces unmistakable sensations. It makes itself known through discomfort that cannot be rationalized away, through knowledge of right and wrong that exists independent of any cultural teaching. A person with an active conscience knows when they have violated something essential, and this knowing comes from their entire being rather than merely from their thinking about whether their behavior matched some external standard. The path to activating conscience requires the opposite approach from what moralists practice. You must stop preaching to others and begin working on yourself. You must stop thinking about virtue and start practicing tiny acts of self-control. You must stop explaining how life should be lived and start noticing how you actually live when no one is watching, when there is no audience for your moral performances. If you recognize yourself in this description of the moralist, there is hope for you, but only if you are willing to abandon your comfortable position as judge and advisor to others and begin the difficult work of observing yourself without mercy. You must stop preaching entirely and start practicing. You must stop explaining to others how they should live and start noticing with brutal honesty how you actually live. Begin with the smallest exercises. Watch how your facial expressions change when someone criticizes you. Force yourself to listen completely when someone is speaking rather than preparing your response. These tiny efforts will show you immediately how mechanical you are, how little control you possess, how vast is the distance between your ideas about yourself and the reality of your being. As you work with these small tasks, something remarkable may begin to happen. Your moral pronouncements about others will naturally decrease because you will be too busy managing your own mechanical reactions to spend energy judging theirs. Your sense of moral superiority will fade as you recognize that everyone faces the same struggle against mechanicalness. Your preaching will be replaced by understanding that real change is so difficult that anyone who accomplishes even small transformations deserves respect rather than moral lectures. This is the path from empty moralism to actual inner morality, from knowing about how to live to developing the capacity to live that way. It requires abandoning all the pleasures of the moralist's position, the satisfaction of feeling superior, the entertainment of judging others, the comfortable illusion that your knowledge of virtue somehow makes you virtuous. What remains after this abandonment is the possibility of real work, real development, and real transformation of being. You must choose between remaining a sophisticated talker about life or becoming someone who can actually live consciously. Between being a moralist who preaches beautiful principles while violating them constantly, or being a person whose behavior gradually comes to match their understanding. This choice cannot be made through thinking, but only through sustained effort to notice the gap between your words and your actions, then working to close that gap through thousands of small struggles against your own automatism.